Welcome back to Star or Shovelware, my name's Luke, and today on the channel I'm bringing you a review for an interesting little indie title called Pad of Time from solo developer Marcus Antonio Palacios, and this one is a retro style platformer which sees you travelling back and forth through different periods in time as three different characters. Now, I'm always happy on the channel to highlight the work of solo devs, and Marcus popped into my Discord to drop me a key for the game, so I want to say thanks to him for that. Let's now get into this review though and see what's what, and as always don't forget to like and subscribe to support both me and the channel. So when it comes to a storyline, unfortunately there isn't one with Pad of Time, and when the game begins you drop straight into a kind of tutorial stage which just runs you through the game's control scheme. Now this is a little bit of a shame in my opinion, as the developers took time to create three different characters for you to play as and given them a kind of games console which is able to transport them back and forth through time. And it would have just been nice to have been given a little bit of context to the game and a bit of a storyline to kind of build up the characters and give the player some sort of explanation as to what they're actually doing here. All of the in-game animations were created by Marcus himself, and it would have been great to have seen these animations come to life in some kind of in-game cutscene, but sadly apart from when you complete the game there's nothing at all story-wise with this one. So gameplay in Pad of Time is pretty much your classic retro platformer formula with a bit of a twist. So you can expect to be working your way through levels, jumping from platform to platform and fighting or avoiding the various enemies that you meet, but the unique thing about this one is the game's namesake, the Pad of Time, and this little gadget is what you're going to be using to work your way towards each level's endpoint. Now the way that this works is that there are two icons at the bottom of the screen, and the left hand hourglass logo is the one that you're looking for here, as this one will light up when you're in a location in which you're able to travel through time. This is performed by hitting the L button and then selecting either the past, present or future before hitting A, at which point you'll be instantly transported to the selected time period, and with it comes a change of scenery and more often than not a different layout for the level. Now you'll be using this mechanic extensively throughout your playthrough as you encounter dead ends and are required to shift to a new time period in order to continue onward, but the problem here though is you never know which time period you need to switch to, nor do you know exactly where these time shift zones are located, and so there's a bit of trial and error involved as you try out different combinations and locations. Sometimes this can be a little frustrating though, especially if you time shift and end up falling back to an earlier point in the level, or even worse if you end up shifting right next to an enemy who instantly attacks you without a moment's notice. The concept itself though is a pretty interesting one, and for the most part it works pretty well and keeps things interesting, and I really enjoy the different features in each time zone and the way in which the enemies change to match each period. Now another interesting feature which is not often seen in these kind of games is the utilisation of the gyro function, and there are several points in the game where this is used to rotate the screen and knock over girders or remove obstructions. And again I felt this was a really creative way of adding a little variety to gameplay, though I would have liked to have seen it used more extensively, possibly through the addition of some puzzle elements in the game, like maybe to roll a ball to a specific location or shift some boxes back and forth to create platforms, something along those lines. Now the platforming itself is pretty standard stuff, as are the enemies, which generally come in two forms. Those which charge at you or those which fire projectiles at you, and each of the characters has a weapon to deal with these enemies, as well as being able to jump on the heads a few times in order to dispatch them. Of the three characters available, each has its own strengths and weaknesses. Mark is the general all-round guy, having average speed and attack damage and a double jump at his disposal. July or Julie is the fastest character, having a weak but long ranged attack, and Art is the slowest of the three, though his attacks are a lot more powerful. And I did have fun experimenting with all three of them, though Julie really has the advantage when it comes to boss fights due to her long distance projectiles. When it comes to the bosses, there's some decent variety here. Each of them has their own movesets to contend with and presents its own challenge, but I did find them easy to exploit, especially with Julie's attacks, and none of them really posed any real challenge aside from the final boss, who was an absolute maniac. All in all though, Pad of Time is a fun little platformer, and I really like the creativity the developer showed in the game. I know that being a solo dev and creating something like this in your spare time can be a tall order, so I applaud Marcus for his efforts with this one. Now let's get on to the issues with the game, because there are a few here, and I'll start off by saying that there's a hell of a lot of jank with this one, which, like Dongo Adventures, proves to be the most challenging aspect of the game. The controls for the most part feel pretty good, but jumping can be a real pain sometimes, especially when playing as Julie because of her speed, and I frequently struggle to land on smaller platforms with her. The camera doesn't help matters at times either, with it going from a perfectly fine level of zoom to up close and personal, with you having very little vision to either side of you, and this proves problematic especially in the 4th or 5th level, as you've just got to guess where to jump, and enemies are frequently able to shoot you from off screen. When it comes to level design, I'd say that it's pretty decent throughout. However, again, I believe it was the 4th or 5th level in which I just didn't have a clue where I was going. Levels are semi-linear in design, but you often have to move back and forth through them, switching between time periods, and the lack of any indication as to where these time swaps are available really made things difficult at times. Finally, the enemies themselves can be a right pain in the ass sometimes, as the majority of them take quite a lot of shots to kill and they respawn as soon as you walk off screen, so mistakes with time shifts can see you fighting your way through the same sets of enemies several times in a single level. Overall though, while the game is heavy on the jank and could do with a fair few tweaks and a bit of a polish to tighten things up, it's a good effort from the solo dev. I enjoyed my time playing Pad of Time despite my frustrations at times, and it's exactly that, a fun but somewhat frustrating platformer. It has a lot of good ideas going on which are a little rough around the edges, but it's clear that the game was a project of passion. There's been effort put into giving Pad of Time some unique mechanics for the players to enjoy, and I think the dev can be proud of what he's accomplished with this one. So visually, the game combines 2D animated sprite work for the characters and enemies with 2.5D level designs, which are akin to something that you'd find in a classic N64 platformer. And while these two distinct visual styles are a bit of a mismatch, they've been utilised well to give the levels depth, with you frequently jumping into the background and teleporting into the foreground. On the audio side of things, the sound effects in this one are relatively generic, and I have to say, really loud for some reason, so I'd recommend turning them down as soon as you start the game, but they work fine for what they are. The game also features an original soundtrack composed in part by Javier Gomez and Alejandro Perez, and the music is enjoyable enough, being suitable for the game type and not getting overly repetitive, unlike some games that I've played recently. So performance wise, the game runs fine on the Switch, and I didn't experience any frame rate issues or crashes throughout my time playing. When it comes to issues, like I said, it's a janky one this. You'll experience plenty of dodgy hitboxes, notice characters and enemies clipping through scenery, and the odd boss which decides to commit suicide on you. But like Dongo Adventure, the jank with this one is all part of its charm. So far as playtime goes, the game is also a little on the short side, comprised of only 6 levels, which is something to bear in mind if you're considering picking it up. But overall, I didn't find it to be a bad little platformer, and when it comes to my own personal rating, I'm going to be giving Pad of Time 3 out of 5 stars. If you're looking for a platformer with a true indie feel to it, warts and all, then Pad of Time definitely has that to offer. It has some interesting mechanics going on, and it's relatively challenging thanks to its jank, and if you want to support a solo dev, then here's a prime opportunity to do so. And so that about does it for this review of Pad of Time on the Nintendo Switch. Make sure to hit that like button if it helped you out and you enjoyed it. Let me know your thoughts and opinions on the game, especially if you've played it, in the comment section below. And as always, if you watch my content regularly but are not yet subscribed, then please consider doing so. For now though, I just want to thank you all once again for watching, and until next time, take care of yourselves and game on.